Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's presentation. My name is Marissa, an attorney with Legal Aid of North Carolina's Helpline. Today, we have Megan Neal presenting for us. If you are unfamiliar with the format of this event, first, Megan is going to review a PowerPoint presentation. At the end of the presentation, we will have a question and answer session. If at any point during the presentation you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A box on Zoom or in the comments section on Facebook. We'll review all questions put in the chat boxes during the Q&A session at the end. Please remember that this is a public forum and Legal Aid is not representing you at this time. Be sure to not reveal personal details about yourself and to keep your questions as general as possible, as we cannot provide any legal advice specific to your individual situation. The session will end when there are no more questions, and regardless of where we are, we will have a hard stop at 4:30 p.m. With all that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Megan to get us started.
All right, thanks, Marissa. Um, as Marissa said, I'm Megan, and I'm an attorney at Legal Aid's Greensboro office in the public benefits practice. And today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about SSDI and SSI, specifically about applications and appeals. And for those who don't know, SSDI stands for Social Security Disability Insurance, and SSI stands for Supplemental Security Income. And today I'm just going to be talking about adult cases because kids' cases, child's cases can be a little bit different. So we are going to talk a little bit about eligibility for these two programs, and then we're going to go into the application process, and then we're going to go into the appeal process if your application gets denied. So the first thing I think we need to know is how does Social Security define disability? So in our society, the word disability can have lots of different meanings. And Social Security has a very specific and maybe unique definition. So the Social Security regulations define disability as the inability to do any substantial gainful activity by reason of any medically determinable physical or mental impairment, which can be expected to result in death, or which has lasted or can be expected to last for a continuous period of not less than 12 months. Um, so there are a lot of words and maybe some legalese in that definition. So the way I would kind of sum that up is that you have to have a severe medical condition that prevents you from working on a continuous, competitive, full-time basis. Of course, the way that plays out in the Social Security Administration processes is pretty complicated. But I think we can just use that definition for the purposes of today. So we're going to go into some of the differences between the two programs in terms of their eligibility requirements. So both programs use that same medical standard for disability that I just read out to you, but they have different non-medical eligibility requirements. So let's go through that now. So for SSD, Social Security Disability Insurance, you might also hear that referred to as Disability Insurance Benefits, DIB, or you might hear that referred to as Title II benefits. That comes from the law that created Social Security Disability. You will especially hear it referred to as Title II when you're dealing with people who work at the Social Security Administration. That's often how they refer to it. So SSDI, it's supposed to be like an insurance program for American workers. So it requires a significant work history on your part. When you work, you pay into the SSDI system through payroll taxes. And the dollar amount that you receive when you become eligible for SSDI is going to be based on your earnings history. You have to become disabled before what they call your date last insured. And what that typically means is that you have to become disabled within 5 years of when you last worked. SSDI is not a means tested benefit. So, what that means is that if you otherwise qualify for SSDI, you will qualify regardless of the amount of income or resources you have. This is really different from SSI. SSI is a means tested program. Um, in terms of retroactivity, you can get back pay for up to 1 year prior to your application date for SSDI. And SSDI is linked to Medicare. After 24 months of receiving SSDI benefits, you're entitled to start getting Medicare coverage. SSI, on the other hand, it's a little different. While, it uses that same disability standard we talked about, there's some pretty significant differences. So SSI, you might also here referred as Title 16 benefits. And that comes from, again, from the law that created SSI. Um, Unlike SSD, where your benefit amount is based on your work history, the federal government sets the SSI payment rate. That's called the federal benefit rate or the federal benefit amount. In North Carolina in 2025, that amount is $967 a month for a single person. Um, that dollar amount, it might be reduced if there are other forms of income in the household, or if the household is receiving other forms of support from outside the household. That's called in-kind support and maintenance. And so, again, unlike SSD, which is not a means tested program, SSI is a means tested program, meaning it's really only available for folks who have low income and low resources. But you don't need to have a work history in the way you do need to have a work history for SSDI. You can also get SSI uh, if you don't meet the disability standard, but if you are over 65. And if you become eligible for SSI, you can get benefits going back to the first of the month after the month you applied. And when you receive SSI, you automatically begin to receive Medicaid. So SSD is Medicare, SSI is Medicaid. So now, before we go into the application process, I want to just go over some of the different Social Security Administration offices that you might come into contact with as you go through the application and appeals processes. The Social Security Administration is the large overarching federal agency that administers SSI and SSDI as well as some other types of benefits. But it's made up of smaller offices. So the first office that you probably will come into contact most is the local offices. These are known as field offices. You're going to be interacting with field offices on a day-to-day basis. When you apply and if you ultimately get approved, they're going to be the ones kind of that act as the go-to office for your benefits. Um, you're going to be kind of assigned to one of these just depending on where you live. There is a field office locator online on Social Security's website, which is ssa.gov. And you can plug in your zip code and it will tell you what your local Social Security field office is. The next office that you might come into contact with is called the DDS. That is in North Carolina, that's based in Raleigh, and that's where your case goes to. That's where your case is sent for workup after you've applied. And DDS, they're going to be the ones to initially look at your medical records and to determine whether you meet the definition of disability. Um, the next office that you might come in contact with is the Office of Hearings Operations. We often call that OHO. Um, that is where you're going to go if you have to appear before an administrative law judge. Uh, we abbreviate administrative law judge to ALJ, so that's probably what I'll be saying for the rest of this presentation. There is also a hearing office locator on the ssa.gov website, and that will tell you where the different hearing offices are throughout the country and how to reach them. The final office that you might come into contact with is called the Appeals Council. The Appeals Council is a body of appeals judges that's based in Falls Church, Virginia. They are the final level of administrative appeal when you are going through the appeals process if you need to. If you lose your hearing, you would then appeal that to the Appeals Council. You're never going to be going to the Appeals Council in person because it is what we call a paper appeal. The council is going to be making decisions based only on the records and other filings in your case. Okay, so now I want to go through the application process. So if you think you might qualify and you want to apply for SSD or SSI, you'll have to take these steps. So you can apply for SSD online. You can also apply for SSI online, but some SSI applications or certain SSI applications can't be filed online. In this case, you will probably want to call your field office directly, and they should help you apply over the phone. They could also make an in-person appointment for you to go there in person to apply. The date that you call them or the date you start your application online, that's called your protective filing date, and they're supposed to use that date as your application date. There are several forms that they're going to have you fill out when you apply. One is going to be a disability report form that goes into your different medical conditions and your medical providers. They're also going to have you fill out a medical release form so that they can start getting your medical records for you and reviewing them. I want to plug a resource that Social Security has. It's called the Adult Disability Starter Kit. You can find this easily online if you just Google it. But I think if you're applying, it could be helpful for you to take a look at this first. It's not the application, but it's like kind of a cheat sheet or a checklist that will help you get everything you need together, to sort of help prepare you for the application. So after you have submitted those forms, then Social Security is going to have to determine your non-medical eligibility. So that's the things we talked about, on that earlier slide about, so for SSI, they're going to have to determine your income and your resource levels. For SSD, they're going to have to determine all of that information related to your earnings history. If they determine that you are non-medically eligible, so in other words, that you meet all of those other, um, non-medical eligibility requirements, your case is then going to be sent to the DDS, which again, it's in Raleigh, and they're going to get all your medical records. Um, Remember that the records that they request are going to be the records that you, um, directed them to in those forms you filled out when you applied. So you want to make sure when you're filling out those forms that you're really giving them the complete and accurate information about your medical history, and especially being complete and thorough about, the providers, the different medical providers that you've seen. Um, they or the DDS might send you to, um, a consultative examiner. That's one of Social Security's doctors. And that doctor will also assess your medical status. Then they're going to send your case to a, medical consultant who will offer an opinion about whether they think you meet the definition of disability. After that, DDS is going to send your file back to your local office, your field office, and they're going to send you a notice in the mail saying whether your case has been approved or disapproved. So, on this slide, we're going to be talking about the appeals process. On the left-hand side, what you'll see is, kind of a list or like a flow chart of the different levels of appeal. On the right-hand side, you're going to see a chart that Social Security makes about how many cases are approved or denied at each level of appeal. So, we're going to kind of go through that, and hopefully that will help you see why, if you think you're entitled to these benefits, the most important thing you can do is just keep appealing, because your best chance, at least statistically speaking, is, of winning or getting your case approved is at the administrative law judge level. So, the first level, of course, is the initial level when you first apply. Um, as you can see here, it is really common for a case to be denied at this level. Hopefully you can see it, but 38% of cases are approved at this level and 62% of cases are denied at this level. If you get a disapproved claim and you wish to appeal, then you start going through these levels of appeal. So the first step is called a request for reconsideration. For a reconsideration, the case is sent back to DDS, and different people from the first time around review everything and issue a new decision. So it's sort of like a second look. Unfortunately, 16% of cases are allowed at this level, 84% of cases are denied at the reconsideration level. So if you get denied at the reconsideration level, you really want to appeal to an administrative law judge. Um, so for the administrative law judge hearing, this is where you're going to appear either in person or by phone or online video hearing. Uh, you're going to appear before the ALJ. This is going to be your chance to make your case before the judge, who's going to be reviewing all your medical records and the other evidence that you have provided in your case. If you have a representative, that person can appear with you at the hearing. There might be a vocational expert at the hearing. There might be a medical expert at the hearing. You have the best chance of winning at this level. So 51% of cases are allowed at this level. 16% of cases are dismissed at this level. That is basically if you don't appear um, to your hearing. 33% of cases are denied at this level. But if you are unsuccessful at the hearing level, you can file a request for review to the Appeals Council. This is the final level of administrative appeal in the process. And again, it's going to be a panel of 3 administrative law judges, and they're all in Virginia, and they're just making a decision on the paper. So it's a paper appeal. At the Appeals Council level, 1% of cases are approved. 3% are dismissed, 16% are remanded, and 80% are denied. We consider a remand at this level to be a win. What a remand is when they send the case back, often to the original judge who heard your case, the original ALJ at your hearing, with specific instructions about how to address certain errors that they think the judge made. If you are unsuccessful at the Appeals Council level, you're going to file a complaint for judicial review in federal district court. Only 1% of cases are allowed at this level. 4% are dismissed. 63% are remanded. Again, we consider that a win. The case gets sent back often to the original administrative law judge. And 32% of cases are denied at the district court level. So the last thing I wanted to talk to you about today is the different appeals deadlines, or I guess the main appeal deadline, the most important appeal deadline. For all of Social Security matters, you have a 60-day deadline for filing appeals. But the 60 days begins to run from the date that you received the decision you're appealing. Social Security assumes that that decisions are received within 5 days of the date that is printed on the decision. So in effect, you really have a 65-day deadline when you are appealing Social Security determinations. If you miss this deadline, if you're late filing your appeal, you can get an exception to the 65-day limit if you have good cause. And good cause means a very good reason. So the typical example of good cause is going to be if you were really sick and hospitalized for much of the appeal period. Social Security is also supposed to take into account language access issues, disability access issues when they are evaluating a good cause claim. When you appeal, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can appeal online on SSA's website, which is ssa.gov. When you do that, make sure to print or save the screen that pops up after you hit the submit button. That screen is going to be, it's going to show the date and time you submitted the appeal. You want to always keep your own proof of whatever you submit to Social Security. And you want to make sure that the proof you keep shows when you actually submitted whatever you submitted. Um, Another way you can file an appeal is by going to your local office and completing the appeal form and getting a date stamped copy showing that you submitted the form. You might need an appointment for that. Um, and again, just you want to keep your own proof of when you submitted it. Um, and I think that is it for today. So, yeah, if there's any questions, you can drop them in the chat.
Awesome. I am not seeing any questions at the moment, so I'm going to give just a few moments here to see if any questions do come in. You cannot unmute in this forum, so if you have a question, you either need to type it in the Q&A box on Zoom or put it in the comment section on Facebook. We'll leave just a few minutes here, few moments to see if any questions do come in. One thing to be aware of if you're looking at the legal aid contact information on the screen, online applications are currently closed for Legal Aid of North Carolina as we are building a new client portal system. So our phone hours are currently from, I believe, 8:30 until 4 o'clock p.m. Monday through Friday. Just a second here. All right. As I am not seeing any questions, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you to all of you for joining us, with a special thank you to Megan for presenting for us. If you'd like to review anything that Megan discussed, we have posted a recording of today's event to our Facebook page. It will be automatically available following this event. If you would like to register for one of our other Listen and Learn programs, such as Fair Housing, Child Custody, Simple Divorce, you can do so on our website at www.legalaidnc.org/clinics. Thank you all so much, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their afternoon.
Bye.